Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. And we start the episode with some very sad news. Hank Steinbrenner, the son of the legendary George Steinbrenner, co-owner and co-chairman of the New York Yankees, passing away at the young age of 63. Seemed like he had a mystery illness, not related to COVID-19. And again, well, it's a private family matter. So kind of shocking, surprising. I mean, Hank's been in the background for the past few years and Hal emerges the face of the team. But obviously him passing away, kind of big news in Yankee land. And in terms of baseball itself, I mean, of course, they're kicking around the idea of, opening up baseball in Arizona and kind of having a bubble city around it that would be, free of contaminants and kind of playing in front of empty stands and so forth. But also kicking around the idea of maybe he's coming to New York, but just playing also in empty stands. And given the choice, if that's the case, might as well play in empty stands in New York. To me, empty stands in New York is the same as empty stands in Arizona, unless you just think the air quality is that dangerous where you can't be around New York. So either way, overall, the theme seems to be that we are going to have baseball in 2020. So overall, that's the good news. So to discuss baseball, bring on a great guest. Now, he covers all Major League Baseball for Sporting News, but he's here today to talk Yankees, Joe Rivera. Hey, Joe, thank you for joining us today. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, friend. How are you?
All right, hanging in there. I guess we're all sheltered in. But really, it fascinates me, as a sports journalist, just we're in a period like this. I mean, when there's no sports going on, like how do you find things to write about? I mean, where do you find inspiration to come up with new stories?
I think it's twofold here. I think you got to look at it as there's still news happening, right? There's still things that are happening in the world. I mean, I understand that live sports drives so much of what we do, and we're always looking for that next event. We're always looking for that next moment to talk about. We're always looking for that reaction, but there's still news happening in the world right now. It might not be as prominent, obviously, without live sports, which kind of sucks. And I think that the second part of it is you always want to drive the conversation, which is why I think on Twitter you're seeing so many guys, so many Twitter users who are usually like, they post the stats and they post, random thoughts and stuff. Now they're like asking the questions of like, which player would you want on your team? So, as a sports writer, you're always just looking for that way to drive the conversation, to keep forwarding a story. And there's still stuff happening, maybe not as frequently as we'd like, but there's still stuff out there.
Cool. Now, of course, you're with the Sporting News, you're syndicated, you cover all MLB. But when it comes to the Yankees, did you get like an assignment, or is it pretty much you have a free hand, you kind of cover whatever kind of baseball story you want, or like, how does it actually work inside the newsroom?
For me, I kind of have free reign up here because I'm the only New York-based reporter that operates for Sporting News. The United States side, we have Canada team up here as well, but I'm the only U.S.-based reporter, New York-based U.S. reporter up here. So, the Jets, I'm at Jets camp every year. I head out to Citi Field. I head out to Yankee Stadium. You always want to come with ideas. That's always the goal, right? You always want to have somebody you want to talk about something anytime you go. But I'm always at the stadium when season is happening. Obviously, it's not now. Always at Citi Field when given the opportunity. But they usually let me do what I want, which is pretty nice. To spend a day at the ballpark with the boys. But it's never just for fun. It's always pretty much work. But they let me do what I want.
Cool. And, I also saw too, obviously you're a part of the Baseball Writers Association of America. Now, I have to ask you, are you that one writer who, didn't vote for Jeter to get into the Hall of Fame? Are you that one person?
No, I am not. I actually don't have a vote yet. I want to say another 5 years I will have a vote as long as I stick with it. But, no, it wasn't me. I think that the funny thing about the Jeter Hall of Fame vote is that it's very, very nuanced. I understand everybody looks at like the hit total, which is fine. Everybody looks at the championship rings, which is also fine. But there's a lot that goes into it, especially with the way that we view players in 2020. We have stats, we have analytics that maybe didn't exist 25 years ago, right? So a lot of the way that people view Jeter now is how they viewed him in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Whereas you have a player like Larry Walker who gets in on his final ballot, and you look at Larry Walker's numbers, and while he doesn't have the hit total, he doesn't have the games total that Jeter had, he was arguably the better player all around, and he gets in on his last ballot, but Jeter gets in on his first ballot essentially because of his hit total and his championship ring. So it's not, for me personally, I mean, I would have, if I did have a vote, I would have given him my vote, but I don't think it was as slam dunk as kind of people were making it seem. I understand that, 99.1% of the vote or whatever it was given to Jeter, but 99.7%, whatever it was. But I think there's a little more that goes into the debate that people are kind of willing to have.
It's funny. Even when it was going on, I said the same thing. Like, I thought, yes, he is a Hall of Famer, but I was just surprised more writers didn't block him the first time around. Like, I figured, yeah, he would get in first or second ballot. Probably first just because of Jeter, but I was just surprised based on what you said, the same thing. Like, because you looked at him, yes, he was the hit king. He was Mr. November and all the great stuff with the Yankees, but you kind of look at him and he's compared during his era, against A-Rod, and you also had, obviously he had like no more Garcia power for a couple. Like, he was just kind of seen as like the third wheel a little bit for a lot of those years. I mean, yeah, he was always hitting singles, but those other players were just like different in terms of the home runs and production that they were bringing in. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was just kind of surprised more writers just didn't block him that first time around. But, I didn't even think it was a big sin. I just thought it was if Mo didn't get in on his first time around, that to me would have been like, whoa, he's just clearly the best ever at his position, and no doubt about it. So to me, that would have been a bigger bugaboo. And, when you get the opportunity, to be a part of these voting processes, how's your stance going to be in terms of like PEDs and players, sort of like the Clemens and the Bonds of the world, who you hear these whispers and stuff, where I personally think they're Hall of Famers, but of course, a lot of people are just going to, look at them as what they did and say, you use the source, even if you we're going to penalize you. I mean, like, obviously not putting you on the spot, but like, how do you kind of feel like going into these conversations? Where's your mindset?
I think the way you look at it is Bud Selig kind of capitalized on steroids in the 90s, right? And he knew what was happening. I don't think anybody can deny they knew what was happening with steroids. So for steroids to essentially save baseball, the summer of '98 saved baseball. It brought a lot of fans back in the home run chase between McGuire and Sosa, and we know both of those guys were juicing. And at the time, it was totally legal. It was stuff that MLB wasn't testing for. It's stuff that you could get at a GNC or in a lot of cases too. So to kind of penalize those guys now for what happened back then is totally unfair. Absolutely unfair. And I've done a complete 180 on the subject, because I used to be, these guys were cheaters. You can't let them in. No, I think that's bullshit now, because you look at a guy like Barry Bonds, I mean, all-time home run king. And there was no doubt that Bonds, even if you speculate like he started taking steroids in the late 90s, he was a Hall of Famer before that. And everybody knew it. But, obviously steroids maybe took his game to another level, but if he's hitting home runs off of a pitcher that's juicing too, then why are we penalizing Bonds for juicing when the pitcher's juicing too? And I know a lot of people speculate that, 75% of players were taking steroids in some form or another in the 90s. I don't know what the number is. Obviously, I don't like to speculate on that. But if it's as rampant as we thought it was back then there's no reason that we should be punishing those guys now.
Now, kind of shifting, in terms of what's going on currently with baseball, I guess it looks like they are trying to introduce it, and maybe going to start out with empty stadiums and then maybe slowly trickle fans in. But just from your perspective, how do you think like fans are going to react? Like, obviously we've gone a couple months now with no sports and kind of like, afraid to stand near each other. Like, how do you just think fans are going to be once they open the gates again? You think they're going to come flooding back in? Or are they just going to be like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to stay home and watch the game anyway. Like, how do you think people are going to react?
Yeah, I mean, whatever that first event is going to be it's going to be a cathartic experience, whether it's baseball or basketball, whatever comes back. If there is sports this year, I mean, I'm an optimist. I like to think that there's a 60-40 chance of baseball coming back this year, especially if they go with the Arizona plan. I just think that fans want something. I think people want something right now. Baseball's always been there through the years. Anytime you have, you look at 9/11, baseball was there after 9/11. Mike Piazza hits the home run. You look at, World War II, baseball was there afterward. Like you have all the players leaving, obviously, for World War II, but baseball was there. Anytime you have these situations in the United States in history where it's like, really, really kind of like dark times, baseball's always been there. And you look at coronavirus now, I think that baseball has a real opportunity to come back and to just take people's minds off of something. So I know that it would really stink for a lot of people if they can't get out to the stadium. I understand that's just the way it's got to be though, right? So I think that fans are going to love when baseball comes back. Should baseball come back, I think they definitely want it back in some form or another. I think that having it is better than not having it at all. So just from my perspective, I know that I obviously miss it. I miss it both as a writer and as a fan. Getting to talk to these guys on a regular basis, getting to see fans at stadium on a regular basis. I think that we all want that back. But if the Arizona plan is the best chance that they have, which kind of sounds like, and it's being supported by health officials, I think that that's probably the best way to go. I think fans are going to be okay with it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I think I'd rather have some baseball and no baseball. And they're already doing it in South Korea. I saw some games televised where it's empty ballparks. And
Right.
yeah, it's a little weird seeing the stands empty, but the players still seem the same on the field. Like, they're joking around with each other, kind of, patting each other on the back. So, and I think we'll adapt to it quickly. And then, yeah, I mean, if you slowly just transition fans back in over the course of time, then, so be it. And I think it's going to be more interesting because I think they're going to try to sneak more cameras onto the field just because now you have more access. So maybe you have like ump cam or you have
Right.
player cam. Maybe we'll see, they'll have the bases all mic'd up. We get a little more conversation. So I actually think it might take fans watching at home inside the game more than, obviously than the traditional way.
And let me tell you, I've been pounding the drum for that for years, even before this. I mean, since I started Sporting News in 2016, and I look at it as a life goal, and maybe this is pompous of me and arrogant of me, but I want to give baseball to the people. I think that baseball's done a really poor job over the last 20 years of trying to give baseball to the people. And what I mean by that is everybody likes a peek behind the curtain, right? You look at the NFL and they had their mic'd up show like once a week where they have players mic'd up and they give you like the best of the quotes that the players got. You look at the NBA, which is probably the best socially facing sport in the world right now with the access that they give players and just how socially active these guys are on Twitter and, all these avenues. Baseball just hasn't done that for whatever reason. And whether it's sharing highlights online or wanting to give fans a peek behind the curtain, which is what fans really want. They want to feel closer to the game. They don't just want to go to a game and see these guys. They want to hear these guys. They want their personalities. They want to hear quotes. They want to hear what these guys are talking about in the dugout. So if a byproduct of this is getting fans more access, and hearing what players are saying, even in those conversations at first base, like, what are they saying to each other? Like, nobody knows. Like, are they saying like, oh, how's your kids? How's this? How's that? Anybody got coronavirus? Like that, this is what these guys are talking about. Even if it's something as innocuous as that, I think that's something that fans want to hear. So if a byproduct of this is Major League Baseball saying, listen, let's give the fans a little bit something extra so they feel closer to you guys, I think that's a wonderful thing. Obviously, I wish it were under different circumstances, but it's only a good thing for fans to have a better look at their players altogether. I don't think there's any denying that feeling closer to the game is something that every fan wants. Baseball is most like a 9-to-5 job, right? These guys work 280 days out of the year. Normal working person works 280 days, 270 days out of the year. So I think that you look at that, and a lot of these players, I can tell you from experience, they're normal guys. I mean, I speak to Chad Green a lot just about, Marvel superhero movies when I speak to him. Like, these guys are all normal people. Clint Frazier, when he was up at the Yankees, I spoke to him about sneakers. He's a big sneaker guy. Like, there's nothing really mythical, I guess, about these guys. There's no like higher standard. When you get to speak to these guys, you see they like the same shows we do. They're not like, they don't like the smell of their own fart, like they're just like, a lot of these guys are just normal dudes. So I think that that's something that fans want to see more of too. And being able to market your players better so they're on the level of, a Mike Trout could be on the level of a Tom Brady. We're witnessing history now, and nobody knows it really outside of the baseball fan. No one knows that Mike Trout is on an arc to become one of the greatest players of all time. So I think that baseball can certainly do a better job altogether. And I think that it starts with just giving players a better platform, try and market their guys better, the ones that are willing to do it. But I think that's where it starts, and I think that giving fans access is a really good idea.
I totally agree. And sort of, shifting some of the players such as Judge. So, let's put on your GM cap for a second. Obviously, even after the season, I think there'll be some baseball somehow, but after the season, of course, you have DJ LeMahieu, who's like, to me, I thought he should be in the MVP just with all the injuries the Yankees had, and he just was this steady Eddie the whole season. But they're going to have to decide, all right, this guy's awesome, but are we going to be able to keep this guy? And, it's a middle infielder who's going to be 31, 32 years old. I mean, do you give a guy like that a 4 or 5 year contract? I mean, how do you think the Yankees are going to approach that?
A guy like LeMahieu, I was saying before I was saying this offseason, you gotta bring this guy to a room and try and get him to sign an extension. I just think that he's so valuable in today's game now. I was actually speaking to Jeff McNeil last summer, and I was talking to him. Him and LeMahieu were like this, almost essentially the same player. When you look at just their skill set, I know that LeMahieu has a little bit more power. Jeff McNeil might have a little bit more versatility in the field, but you look at what they do, they're essentially the same guy. And I was talking, I said, Jeff, it kind of seems like contact hitting in baseball has gone the way of the dodo. It's like everybody wants to swing for the fences now, and most players are okay with hitting, 250, 260 if it means they have an extra 5 or 6 home runs. And he says, he's really funny. He goes, yeah, it's like hitting the baseball is the new market inefficiency. Like, whereas 10, 15 years ago, maybe getting on base was the market inefficiency and nobody really valued that as much as a high batting average. Now you see guys with higher batting averages are becoming more valuable to a team. So for a guy like LeMahieu, you look at the Yankees lineup, and obviously Judge strikes out a lot. I mean, he's a good hitter, but he strikes out a lot. That's just the nature of his game. Giancarlo Stanton strikes out a lot. Gary Sanchez will strike out a lot. You need contact hitters. You need guys that'll hit for average in your lineup. And I think that a guy like LeMahieu is just so valuable in that way. So if I were the Yankees, I would have brought him to the table last offseason, say, we got to keep you around because we're not moving Glaber. We're not moving Glaber to second. I think that's apparent. They're not moving him back to second. And LeMahieu is a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. So you lock him up. You don't have to worry about anybody in the farm system. They don't really have a lot of options down in the farm system right now as a replacement too, unless you really believe in like a Tyro Estrada who's shown some flashes, but he's not DJ LeMahieu. So if I'm Brian Cashin, I'm trying to sign this guy up. I think that a bat like his will translate because it's not reliant on power. It's more reliant on making contact with the baseball, and I think that that's the kind of skill that'll help him into the later stages of his career.
No, I totally agree. Only thing I worry about him a little bit is because being a second baseman, and I think last year he had the benefit of he did a lot of part-time at first base because we don't really technically have a first baseman, and Voit was out for a while. So I just think, yes, if they do give him a longer-term deal, but at some point I think he's going to have to become like a first baseman because I just think the wear and tear for a mid-30s player is going to, take its toll on the plate. So, I think another season at second base is okay, but beyond that, there would have to be some sort of transition to a corner infield spot because, again, I just think he would wear himself out diving for balls. Like look at Pedroia in his day. He was jamming his shoulder and his fingers all the time. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have LeMahieu healthy as possible. So if that's the case, I just think at some point then that would translate to him, having to move different positions, maybe, one of the corner infield spots. And speaking of Judge there too now, obviously that's going to be a big decision because obviously this is like our generation's Jeter, for Yankee fans. But, the past 2 seasons been hurt a lot, and, with the writings on the wall there. But, the ton of potential's there. And he's still young relatively overall. But, do you think they break the bank for him, or does Cashman kind of, deal with him the same way he dealt with Jeter in that time when, they were kind of getting a little icy? Eventually the Yankees signed Jeter, gave him that $57 million deal, but also Cashman was willing to say, hey, if you can finally go a better deal, go walk. You think they handled Judge the same way?
I think that with how en vogue you see these extensions for homegrown players now, obviously Luis Severino got paid. He got the big extension. Aaron Hicks is not a homegrown guy, but he got the big extension. I think that that's kind of the way that the Yankees want to do business now is if you can lock up a guy kind of like to a team-friendly deal, I think that that's the way that they're going to go if they can, because in the long run, it'll save them money, which no doubt it's not just the Yankees. Everybody wants to save money in Major League Baseball now. That's just the way it's going. So I think that they're going to probably approach him for extension. I don't have any inside information, but it would be the smart play for sure. I think you look at his injuries. Obviously, the oblique was bad, but he gets hit by a pitch. You can't really predict that. It's kind of tough to kind of put that on his ledger and say he's injury prone. That's tough. He was still hurt. You can still hold that against him, I suppose. But I think that, speaking with Judge, he's a silent leader. If I had to he's the captain of the team right now. A lot of people look at Brett Gardner as that kind of guy, but I think you look at Aaron Judge and he's just so Jeter-like in everything that he does. He's just maybe he's a little more open with the media. Jeter was notoriously poor for speaking with the media, just off the record kind of stuff. But Judge he's a team leader. I saw in the clubhouse maybe last year, I think it was the year before that. It was Stan's first year, and Stan had a bad game, and Judge walks over to him at the end of the day, and Stan just kind of like very dejected, just sitting in the corner, like head down, and Judge walks over, he puts his arm around him, they're talking for a few minutes. It's stuff like that. It's like small moments of leadership that you see that really matter to guys in the clubhouse. So I think his value goes way beyond what you see on the field. I think the Yankees understand that. So I think they're going to keep him around. I just think that so many fans love him now. Everything about him is just so unique. His size, his number, just the way he handled himself on the field, kind of being that guy that went from being, should we trade this guy because he had a really, really poor first year. Everybody remembers how bad he was when he was first called up to now being a dominant force in the lineup. So his name is unique. So I think the Yankees understand that, and I think they understand there's dollar bills in their eyes. There's dollar signs in their eyes. They know that when you have a player like Judge. So I think they're going to keep him around. I think that signing him to like a team-friendly extension is going to be the way that they want to go.
I agree the same way. Like, is it for yes, he's a great player, but also he's just a character in the team. He's just the face of the team, and it's just like you got to keep this guy locked up for a long time. He's like, this generation's Mattingly or Jeter, or now you got Judge. Can't let a guy like that walk in. You mentioned before now Clint Frazier, obviously been up and down. There was these whispers like he's not mature and stuff like that. Is there anything you see or hear from your side that is the case, or maybe he has been showing some more maturity? Because I love his bat. It's just, the glove is the kind of like you got to hold your breath a little bit,
Right. I think the thing with Clint is he's such a unique guy. I'll say that. I wanted to write a story last year, the year before. Clint Frazier is redefining what it is to be a Yankee, because he is very un-Yankee-like. And I mean that in the best way possible. Like he's a fiery guy. He's a very passionate guy. He's a fun guy. Like I mentioned before, he loves his sneakers. He loves his cleats. His locker is just filled when he's up. His locker just filled with different types of cleats and different types of sneakers. He's got probably 20, 30 pairs. So he's a guy that's very un-Yankee-like in a lot of ways, but it's a good thing because I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows what's happening behind closed doors in a locker room, right? I don't think anybody knows what's happening in that trainer's room. I don't think anybody really knows what's happening when they're riding planes together. But from what I've seen, he's a fun-loving guy. I think guys in that clubhouse like him for the most part. His bat is something special. It really is. We saw it we saw it last year in that stretch when he played at the beginning of the year. He just needs opportunity. So I don't know if he's going to get that here, though. That's what stinks. Obviously, the Yankees are locked up in the outfield right now between Judge, Hicks, and Stan. Obviously, Hicks injured right now, but there's no real spot for him. At some point, Stanton's going to move over to a DH spot. Maybe that opens a spot in left field. Who knows? But I think that Clint is kind of like the shot in the arm that the Yankees need at times. He's a spark plug. He's a fiery guy. I don't know about again, I can't speak to his maturity level. I don't think anybody really can, because we're not in those meetings. We're not in those hitters meetings. We're not in those meetings with Brian Cashman where he speaks to guys. We're not in those meetings with other players who are not riding the planes. So I can't speak to that. But I can tell you that he's a very, very different type of Yankee than what other guys have come up before. And I think that just to put a bow on it, I think that's why a lot of like traditionalist Yankee fans don't really take to him, because he's not really that buttoned-down guy. He wears the funky cleats. He plays with a certain type of arrogance. He plays with an overconfidence sometimes. So I think that's why a lot of people don't like him. But he's a good dude. I can say that. I think that media's gone unfairly after him a little bit in the last few years. But I think that the Yankees will probably, if I had to guess, they've probably been looking for trade partners to try and get rid of him. I just don't think that there's a real spot for him more than anything else. Not his demeanor, not his maturity, any of that. I just think that they look at the outfield right now as constituted and they say, we just don't have a spot for you right now, and they want to move him somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I just like, when he plays, it's like the ball just flies off his bat, and I love it. Again, you figure out you get one more year out of Gardner maybe, and he walks in there. Maybe that makes room for him. But like I said, but also he's a great talent. And I'm feeling the same thing that, not that they're dying to get rid of him, but they're going to end up packaging him
Right.
somewhere else. And we'll just shift really quickly to one of the rivals, the Red Sox. Now, it seemed like this season, in terms of what they're shipping out, Mookie Betts. Now, yes, great, you get rid of the Price contract, but I almost think they almost raised the white flag for this season. Be like, all right, you know what, the Yankees, we're not going to catch them. Plus, they got Cole. Let's just ship this guy out. And even with Sale, maybe they were kind of sitting on the Tommy John a little bit. They figure, all right, you know what, it's a lost season. Go get the Tommy John. I mean, what do you think, like, where the Red Sox head is at right now?
When the Red Sox season ended last year, I wrote something saying all the Red Sox had to do is stay put because they're still a very talented team. I think that obviously you look at their core: Benintendi, Betts, Bogarts, the three of the killer bees, JD Martinez, obviously. You look at these guys, Rafael Devers. I mean, this is a talented team. Michael Chavis. I mean, these guys are all key position players for them, right? So even if you ship off Betts, which I don't think they ever should have done, I thought it was just stupid to do because Betts is a top 3 player in baseball when he's right, and you don't trade top 3 players in baseball for a middle infielder at Double-A and a guy who may or may not be a backup catcher. Like, nobody knows. So, I just think that you look at what they were a team that needed everything to go right this season. If we're talking a normal regular season, 162 game season starts on time, I think you look at them as a team that everything had to go right from the top to bottom. Chris Sale had to be an ace. The rest of the guys in that rotation had to be good. The bullpen had to be good. Everything had to go right for them to compete in the AL East because the Yankees were good. Everybody knew that the Yankees were good. But let's not forget the Rays won 96 games last year too. And the Rays aren't a fluke team. They're built to win now, and they're built to win for the next 5 years. Their farm system is incredibly deep, and they're very talented, and they can pitch. So I think the Red Sox kind of looked at the season, like you said, and maybe they waved the white flag a little bit and said, maybe this isn't the year. Maybe we look to the future a little bit. If we can get some pieces for 2 years down the line, maybe that'll help us out a little bit. Shedding payroll, which I think is stupid coming from Boston where they print money. I thought they were a team that maybe they could have snuck into a wild card, but the second that Sale started having the elbow issues again, that it was over for them because you can't rely on a Nathan Eovaldi. I'm sorry, he was great in the postseason in 2018, but you cannot look at him and say this is an answer in the rotation just given his injury history. And the rest, Eduardo Rodriguez was their one other guy who was going to pencil into that rotation, and the rest of them wasn't really. It was a cast of guys that you weren't really sure what you were going to get out of. So I think that the Red Sox position player wise is still really talented. I think that they're still going to be set up pretty good if they decide to spend some money and rework their rotation a little bit. But if you don't have pitching in this league, we see it with every team. It won't matter once it comes to October. So they're going to have to get their rotation sorted out in this coming off season to really start to compete in the AL East and for the AL wild card again.
Well, hopefully we do have baseball this season. Hopefully we get back to that Yankee-Red Sox rivalry, even if it's only for a couple of games. Well, Joe, I could talk baseball with you all day until we get baseball back again, but unfortunately we're going to have to end it here. So people can catch you at Joe Rivera SN. Also, I saw 2 nerds and a third as a little side project. Definitely catch up Joe from Sporting News. Great writer. Thank you for joining us today. And again, hopefully we have baseball in some form soon enough. Now, one more thing. You have a press pass, right?
I do.
Can I borrow it?
How much money you got in your wallet?